diversity shaping futures in the service of humanity is very apparent in and drives the institution to find answers to Africa's developmental problems, because we know we have a lot of those. And this is why UNISA is constantly trying to find ways to work with SMEs and to bring about change. So Ayanda will be telling us more about the initiatives that they have to work with SMEs. And then Tshaya Mashabela Attorneys is a boutique law firm rendering specialized services to private and state-owned entities, whether small or big companies, and whether they're locally or internationally based. And these services are aimed exclusively at intellectual property, commercial, and corporate law. And Tshaya Mashabela ensures that creations of the human mind protected and commercialized, which is what we also aim to do, like with hosting events such as these. And Tshaya Mashabela Attorneys is a firm believer that intellectual property is not just valuable for blue chip companies, it's valuable for SMEs as well. And countless SMEs around the world have started from just a small idea that was protected and optimally commercialized. So I'll just give, I know this might be boring, but I think it's important to give some values that will tie in the importance of intellectual property and SMEs. So the European Union Intellectual Property Office found that SMEs that have filed at least one intellectual property right are 21% more likely to experience subsequent growth rate, and 10% more likely to become a high growth firm. So this is like 21% more chance of becoming a high growth firm simply by protecting your intellectual property. And then the likelihood increases by 9% for SMEs that filed at least one patent. And this goes up to 13% for SMEs that have filed trademarks. And I think this goes into the fact that people identify well with brands. I mean, if we go into Pele Box and Livestock Wealth, for instance, people already know just from the brand. I can just show them the logo and they know. And I think that's why trademarks are also such an essential intellectual property right. And SMEs that have multiple intellectual property rights filed, for instance, if a company has bundles of patents, trademarks, designs, copyright, for instance, they're 33% more likely to achieve high growth than SMEs with just one intellectual property right filed. And this is the reason why we've assembled such a diverse panel of experts today to highlight the importance of intellectual property to SMEs and how they take the ideas to market. And before we proceed, I'd just like I speak about the panel.
Kutwana, couldn't hear you.
I was saying that before I give the house rules and introduce the panel or get the panel to introduce themselves, can you please just give us the opening remarks?
All right. No, thank you very much, Kutwano. You know, perhaps maybe before I say anything, perhaps maybe let me just ask, that we keep our mics on mute, until such time that we have to speak, and then we can unmute ourselves. Otherwise it creates quite a lot of feedback, system. Thank you very much, Kutwano, for that. Thank you for that very interesting statistics that you've mentioned there. And firstly, I just want to thank the panel members for making the time, to be part of this very important conversation on IP and SME. I'll mention a few things, without necessarily making any political statements. If any of what I'm going to say sounds more like a political, they sound more like political statements, it's certainly not intentional at all, right? It's just some of the views that I hold, particularly around this topic, which I'm really passionate about. Like, today's topic is really something that is of national and even continental importance, given the challenges that we face, as a country and as a continent. We are all too familiar with these challenges. access to potable water, primary health care, unemployment, sluggish economic growth, and widening inequality. And I mean, these are not new challenges. These are challenges that have been with us for quite a while. And it seems to me, and perhaps from judging by some of the experiences in other systems, that the solution to some of these challenges may no longer lie either with government alone, or even with the multinationals or huge corporations alone. But it seems to be that these are challenges that can best be tackled, by SMEs, who are generally they are more responsive, adaptable, and quite agile. For instance, I'll give an example. The lessons from the OECD countries. The SMEs account for up to 90% of employment, right? And therefore significant contributors, to the economic growth in those particular systems. Contributors to some of the issues that we've mentioned around inequality and the likes. Right? If also you look at the work done by the Stanford Research Group or Stanford Research Institute, it confirms this also about the US. Over a 30-year period, they've looked at the contribution of tech-based startups, right, to employment in the US. And they found that tech-based startups created more employment opportunities, right, than huge companies, that have been there or the incumbents that have been there for quite a while. This is something that I think holds some lessons. This holds some lessons for us as a country, for us as a continent. And I'm one of those people that really believe that, when it comes to SME development, particularly, those SMEs that are actually exploiting technology, the continent is not the march. Look south, there's quite good examples that are happening. Look at the east, there's quite good examples, of these that are happening in East Africa. You look at West Africa, there's quite a lot of examples. Right? And of course, the continent has grand plans, contained in some bold statements, such as the AU Agenda 2063, as well as the Science, Technology, Innovation Strategy for Africa, amongst other documents. And if you look deeply into these documents, you actually discover that, they place emphasis on innovation, right, as the driver, for solving some of the challenges that we mentioned before. Similarly, in our own space in South Africa, for instance, you have the National Development Plan, right, which, when reading the National Development Plan, it places real innovation at the center of this, of solving some of the societal challenges. And of course, this should translate. If you've got those grand plans at the continental level, and I'm sure at the national level, and also at national level, that places emphasis on innovation. Of course, that should translate. We should expect that should translate, to more funding for science in general, more funding, to support for SMEs, right, including for technology adoption, right. Whether that is happening or not, this is something that the panel members will actually tell us. They are the experts in this. They experience this on a day-to-day basis. But so the move towards this knowledge-based society requires that we boost our ability to produce knowledge that we can use, the society can use. We have seen, in South Africa, other parts of the continent, the emergence of what are referred to as technology transfer offices in higher education institutions, whose mandate is really to ensure that the knowledge that is generated within the academy finds expression in society in one way or the other. Therefore, SMEs and higher education institutions, they are natural partners. They should be partners, as we march towards ensuring that the SME sector grows, develops, and becomes competitive, and quite frankly, becomes quite resilient, to some of the shocks that we've experienced in recent times. So, higher education should be a partner in all our attempts to create what Peter Thiel and Blake Masters referred to as the 0 to 1 scenario, where we begin to bring new things, create new things, which are sources of competitive advantage. But of course, I mean, we've got a panel of experts here that are going to tease these issues, discuss with us, talk to us about some of these issues, right? Discuss how SMEs can create this 0 to 1 scenario, right, where new things are created, protected, and deployed. Talk about the actual, deployment of IP in this case. And I believe I'm one of those people that believe that a 0-to-1 approach, it's the only one that creates a sustainable competitive advantage, right? As we march towards, this goal, grand vision that Africa, of the Africa that we want. So that's the byline of the document, AU 2063. It says the Africa that we want, right? And of course, it's very prosperous, right? Very peaceful, right? Good economic growth, right? Access to healthcare and all these other things, that are good. And of course, it requires, in my view, it requires personal efforts. It requires personal action to be able to make that a reality. Not just government doing that. And of course, we've got people here, that are actually doing exactly just that. We've got a panel that has got, entrepreneurs, that are busy deploying their technologies, creating businesses out of this, exactly doing what Peter Thiel and others are, are talking about, which is a 0-to-1 kind of, approach, to building SMEs. With those few words, colleagues, panel members, thank you very much. I look forward, to the engagements. I look forward to the discussion. To all the other colleagues that have attended, thank you very much for making time to be part of this conversation. And I'm sure that, there will be opportunities for you to actually raise questions, because through those kind of discussions, that we are all enriched. Thank you very much, Kutlwana. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ayanda, for that enlightening information. I just want to add that, you said SMEs create over 70% of employment around the world. In South Africa, that figure is less than half of that. So it becomes even more important for us to take this further and to figure out how we can unlock the full potential of SMEs. Thank you for that. That being said, I just wanted to mention a few house rules. So just to reiterate, for everyone that is attending, please mute your mics until it's time for you to speak. This is predominantly for the panelists. And panelists, if you'd like to add anything to what your fellow panelists are saying and so forth, please just feel free to jump in so that, we can have a wholesome conversation around the discussions. So I just want to start with asking the panelists, in 30 seconds, please introduce yourselves. We'll start with Tumelo. Tumelo, hold on, you are muted.
Okay, thanks, Kukan. Technology. I'm Tshaya Mashabela. I'm a businesswoman and a registered patent attorney. I'm a director and a founder at Tshaya Mashabela Attorneys. Thank you.
Neo.
Hi, everybody. My name is Neo. I am an engineer running a social enterprise focused on access to medicine. So we are helping alleviate the challenge of patients having to wait an inordinate amount of hours in queues at public healthcare facilities.
Thank you, Ntutugo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ntutugo Shezi. I'm a founder and CEO of Livestock Wealth. Livestock Wealth is a crowd farming platform that enables anyone to be a farmer. Thank you. I'm looking forward to today.
And then Florence. Florence, you are muted. Florence, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm Florence Atuluku, a partner in Alliand, an international law firm providing a comprehensive range of specialist legal services. I specialize in corporate law and IP law. covering corporate governance, risk management, and compliance. Good to be with you here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. And then Yvonne.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yvonne. I'm operating Chilume Company Attorneys in Gaborone, which was founded in 2001. My co-partner is Topiwa Chilume. We are both IP lawyers, and but we are generally we run a general practice on law. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. And then William. Where's William? He's disappeared. There he is.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kiwahile William Murisakeng. I'm a senior manager and acting general manager at the Biopark of the Innovation Hub. We are a bio business incubator, and I've got a passion for intellectual property. I also own a consulting firm called Photonics IP Management Company. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, William. And Ayanda, so you are here to tell the participants what it is that you do at UNISA.
Thank you very much, Kutlwano. I'm not sure myself, but
Hi.
No, I'm joking. I'm with the Technology Transfer Office at UNISA. We're responsible for the protecting IP that comes out of R&D, developing that IP and ensuring that it's commercialized, for the benefit of the people in the Republic. That's where the link comes in with SMEs. As perhaps maybe later on we'll talk about some of the initial indications coming out of the second survey, for tech transfer survey in the country, which is quite interesting. But yeah, that's what I do at UNISA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, I think that we start off the panel discussions with finding out exactly what is intellectual property, the reason that we have this webinar today. So Tumelo, I'm going to hand over to you to please just tell us what is intellectual property and what kind of intellectual property rights there are out there.
Okay, thanks, Kutlwano. So intellectual property, we say, is the creations of the mind. And it is very important for people to understand that as long as something is still in your mind, it's not intellectual property. So you need to find a way to take whatever that is in your mind and take it out, and then we can recognize that as intellectual property. So intellectual property can be protected by law in different ways, through a patent, a trademark, a copyright, a registered design, or a trade secret. I always try to divide intellectual property into two, registered rights and non-registered rights. And the reason is, I think there's a lot of misconception amongst people assuming that, only intellectual property only relates to patents or only relates to things that requires registration. However, there are two types of, or two groups of intellectual property rights, like I said, registered as well as non-registered rights. Registered rights, what do I mean by that? These rights will only come into effect once you have went through a registration process. And examples of those rights is a patent, and a patent protects an underlying system. It protects a technological solution. It protects a new method of doing something. And the term of a patent is 20 years, as long as you pay your renewal fees every year. Another registered right is a trademark. A trademark protects the brand or a name or a slogan that differentiates your goods and services from goods and services of other people. And the term of a trademark, you can have a trademark forever. It's actually indefinite, as long as you ensure that you pay renewal fees every 10th year. Another registered IP is a design. A design protects the way something looks. It protects an appearance of an article. For example, if you look at the Coca-Cola bottle, the way in which that bottle is shaped could be registered through a design. So with regard to a design, you can protect the shape or a pattern or a configuration of an article. And the term of a design is 10 years or 15 years, depending on the type of design that you have registered. So moving over to non-registered rights, these rights, they exist automatically. So you do not have to go through any registration process in order for you to have this particular right. And an example of that is copyright. So a copyright will protect an expression of an idea, the manner in which you are expressing your particular idea. So examples of copyright could be a music or a book that you've written, or an article or a film, or data, or a manual that you have created within your business. So this would be protected by copyright. And copyright, I mean, the term generally is about plus minus 50 years from the date on which the article became available to the public. Another non-registered right is a trade secret. This one, it protects information that is, commercially valuable to you, and it must have commercial value, and you must have went through some process of ensuring that that information is being kept secret. An example of a trade secret is, the famous Coca-Cola formulation, as well as the KFC recipe. Those are trademarks. So these two types of rights, you don't need even an attorney, or you don't even need to go through any registration process in order for you to have a right associated with the particular materials that I just mentioned.
Okay, excellent. And thank you for that, Timelo. I think it's important to know. Okay, to go flexing there. We see you. It is important to know exactly what you're protecting, so thank you for that information. And my second question now is this: why is it important for SMEs to protect and properly manage their IP despite the perceived high costs? I mean, I'm sure people will say, but I can't file a patent, 30,000 Rand. But why is it important to protect your ideas?
Oh, thank you for that one. I believe that it's actually more costly for you not protecting your IP and managing your IP than actually protecting it. So you might think that you are finding yourself cutting costs, but actually it might come back to bite you. So there are a couple of reasons why SMEs are supposed to protect their IP and manage their IP. The first one, which is that once you protect your IP, you are provided with exclusivity. So you are being given an opportunity to firstly be able to, exclude other people from copying your product or copying your process. So you have that monopoly that is being provided to you. For example, if it's a patent, I will say a patent is a relationship between you, or an agreement between you and a government of a country, where you are being provided with monopoly and provided with the right to be able to exclude other people from copying your product. In exchange, obviously, you need to disclose that particular patent. So when you protect your IP, first thing, you are being given a monopoly that will enable you to commercialize as well as exclude other people from copying your IP. The second thing is that when you protect your IP, especially through a trademark, it allows your customers to distinguish your goods and services from goods and services of other people. I mean, we see there, Mr. Shezi, with Farmers Club and Livestock Wealth. We are now able to go and purchase meat based because of that particular brand, because Livestock Wealth has differentiated its goods from the goods of other people. So when you protect your IP, you sort of establish identity within the market, or identity within within your competitors. Another thing that I think my colleague there now is going to touch on in detail is basically when you have protected your IP and you're managing your IP effectively, it sort of enhances your chances of attracting investors. It gives a credibility. If I'm an investor and you come and tell me that you have at least filed a provisional patent application, it tells me something. It tells me that this person understands the value of this IP that they have developed, and this person is actually taking themselves seriously. So it provides you with a little bit of credibility, and I think funders will look at you differently if they see that you are managing and protecting your intellectual property. Another thing is that when you manage your intellectual property, and which I think this is very important, is that it gives you an opportunity to avoid the risk of infringing other people's intellectual property. So when you are managing your IP within your business, you will have a culture where you actually check and see, are we stepping on somebody else's toes? Are we doing things that we are not supposed to be doing? And that is very important, because you don't want to find yourself having spent a lot of money in building a manufacturing capability, only to find out you are actually infringing some other people's IP. So when you manage your IP effectively, you will be able to identify these kind of things, and you will be able to avoid this particular risk. And I think lastly, all I can say is that IP is an asset, and it's a valuable asset, and it's so valuable such that you can even include it on your financial books. So IP, when you manage it effectively, believe you me, it will increase the value of your company. It will provide you with a competitive advantage. And I said lastly, but one other thing that just came into my mind is that we are in a knowledge economy. Believe you me, if you do not have intellectual property within your business, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a competitive advantage. So, intellectual property, intangible asset, it is what is going to set you apart from your competitors, because it's not easy to imitate. So if you have intellectual property, intangible assets within your business, I say, you know what, you will have a competitive advantage, and which again, it will allow you to set you apart from your competitors. So IP, again, I think it's a misconception where people assume that IP is for the blue chip companies, but I say the blue chip companies are where they are because of intellectual property. So if you as an SME, you one day want to be where the blue chip companies are, you need to start taking your intellectual property and managing it effectively to ensure that you're increasing the value of your company.
All right. Thanks for that, Tumelo. So with that being said, I just want to jump to Ntutugo now. Ntutugo, like when a lot of people think about financial services, it's hard to think about, protecting your IP in that kind of sphere, because we just think financial services, it's just numbers. What can you protect? So can you please just tell us about how you came to the realization that there's value in this idea that you have, and taking the decision that you want to protect this value and take it to market?
Yeah, thank you, Kutlan, and good morning to everyone. For me, the journey around IP protection came it was 2014. So there's like a year and a half before we launched Livestock Wealth itself. So I had this idea of using cattle as an investment, so it was there in my head. When you work on an idea for a couple of years, you're just working on it without writing it down, or it just keeps boiling. And then I always used to see the Adams and Adams office on my way to work. Because I would drive, I was working in Pretoria East at the time. And then this other day I said, okay, let me just pull over here and find someone who I can tell about this cow thing. And then maybe see how much they're going to charge me to register a patent. And then, so I walked up there. I think or that day, the Tumela wasn't in. I think she wasn't in that day. Oh, wait, no, I can't remember. You'll remember Tumela, because she used to work at Adams at the time. So, in fact, she was amongst the very first few people in the world. In fact, probably the first one that I told the idea at length and said, okay, this is what I'm thinking around using cattle, instead of shares. People can use it as an investment, and it grows, and when the cow reproduces, then there's profits, etc., etc. But what I found most useful as well is that the on the other side, the patent attorney almost takes over your brain in a way and becomes you as well, and takes your ideas and expands on them and helps to think about things you have not thought about in terms of drafting the patent and making it real, because when I looked at the patent document, some of the stuff, I was like, I didn't think of that, but geez, that was quite smart. Which is stuff that the patent attorney would add on their own in this case, which Timel did at the time. Where I've seen, okay, firstly, just having the patent done, in a way, it's a form of validation as well. That okay, you're not that crazy after all. That there's someone else who's alive who thinks your thing is worth something. It is worth protecting. So that's great in that way. And then I think most importantly, what we've seen as well is, when you've started an idea and it's new, and then the moment it becomes a little bit of a success, while you are still floundering, no one copies. The moment then people see that, this thing can really work, then the copycats come in the thousands, So and that is the one other good thing. And then someone's saying, I look at IP as like owning a gun, I can use it if I want to, but that's the power of having it, and then people knowing that I've got it, and there's less people messing with me, in a way. That's how I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, and did the initial costs not deter you in the end? Did you not look at the quote and be like, ooh, maybe I don't want to do this? What gave you that push? Like, did you believe so much in your idea?
Yeah, well, at the time, for me, that was 2013. So I think things were still cheaper at the time. It was 15,000 Rand. So actually, I was surprised that it's not as expensive. I thought it was going to be more. Plus, I had another business that I was doing, so I was able to just write that expense off in the other company. But I think if you think that your idea is worth more than 30,000 Rand, then sure, then do patent it. If you don't think it's worth more, then just don't protect it, but don't complain to anyone when other people start making more money than you.
Thanks, Tutu. I think that's very sound advice. So, yeah. Yvonne and Florence, I'm going to ask you to please just inform us, like in Nigeria and Botswana, respectively, do you also find that entrepreneurs complain a lot or are deterred by the cost of protecting their intellectual property rights?
Yes. The finance cost, the cost is always deterring a young, vibrant, well, mostly it's the young minds that seem to appreciate the potential of and the purpose of IP, so what they do is that with a sign, as my sign of the law firm Tshaya Company, trademark agent, they have time to walk in the office And these are youngsters, tertiary, and I'll sit there with them in the meeting room, explain, and you can see they understand, they appreciate, but the cost part, that's where they tend to have a problem.
And can I just ask Yvonne, like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you have like any support structures to help these youngsters? And Florence, that's for you as well. Like, despite the costs, are there any support structures in Nigeria for these innovators?
I won't say we have a formal support structure. I think it's dependent on maybe interest groups, IP practitioners that are interested in supporting and helping the innovators, SMEs, to take their ideas to the marketplace. For example, or my firm, what we do, we try to support startups because we try to get involved with the businesses right from the point of conception. And like with our clients, don't come to us when you've concluded on your ideas. We want to be part of the process from the beginning. That way, we are looking at the business holistically and looking at all the protection strategies, competitive advantages strategies you need to put in place in order to grow your business. So to that extent, we may start with an intro marginal fee charge, and at times even pro bono without any fee, preliminary support until you get on your feet and we begin to say, okay, come, let's discuss. But we want to be part of the business, and because the trust of the firm is adding value, providing solutions, you don't want to scare them away. You don't want to kill ideas. So we try to, so on a formal level, we don't have a structure, but I think on individual levels, individual firm levels, that structure exists.
Yvonne, did you want to also add?
Yes. Well, you see, IP is considered as there's a perception that we are trying to eliminate, and but of recent years, due to support structures from government, the entrepreneurs are, joining this, science parks, the Botswana Innovation Hub, the LEA, the local enterprise authorities, and there is some form of awareness that an understanding, a deeper understanding of IP protection, because you see, with this facilitation of these youthful companies, they tend to concentrate on advisory services referring to company registration, and finances, etc., but excluding IP. But of recent years, there's been a change where they're including intellectual property, though it's not the patent. The patent with its stringent measures, they still back off. So yes, there's still a lot of registrations on trademarks and all, but with patents require a lot of step-by-step processes. The intellectual property management of other processes, which are expensive and require some finances. But we have a pro bono kind of approach to this, to encourage them and not to, so that they don't give up. You want to see, yes, they have brilliant ideas.
Florence, yes, and her firm is doing. All right, thank you, ladies. So now I just want to jump to Neo. Neo, please just tell us how IP has changed the way in which you conduct business. I'm pretty sure that there's been a difference, in how you run your business based on the fact that you have IP, and then that informs certain strategies.
Thank you so much, Katlana, and thank you very much for the opportunity. So I guess when we started our business, we were solving a particular challenge that is very much problematic in the public healthcare space. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, Steve.
Apologies. So we were solving a particular problem that was very...
Sorry, can I please just interrupt you? Sorry to the participants. I actually neglected to mention that please, if you have a question, please type it in the chat section and then I'll put it through to the panelists. So yes, please, and my apologies for not mentioning that in the beginning. We will make sure to answer your questions, type them up, and we'll put them through to the panelists. Thank you. No, sorry for the interruption. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so we had an innovation that was mostly targeted in public healthcare and public sector. And anybody who understands the procurement channels in that particular space, but adoption for innovation can sometimes be very, very difficult. It takes time and requires you to get a lot of people to say yes. And we knew that procurement was always going to be a challenge. And for instance, in South Africa, when you look at the Public Procurement Act, that governs how government should be procuring services or innovations, we picked up that there was a strategic sort of positioning around how we can use IP to not necessarily. So Dumelo mentioned a point earlier about how do you the deal between yourself and the country is that you'll disclose what the technology is, but in return you get an ability to have a competitive advantage in order to provide that particular service at the exclusion of other people that want to pay you directly. So we were definitely looking after that particular opportunity, and because we did not want to go through the route of like, you know, a public tender that has to be open to everyone, blah, 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 blah. And if it's open, you deal with the challenges of middleman that wants to say, look, I have the relationship, you can't get through. And all of a sudden with the patent, you definitely have a right to be able to bid as a sole provider of that particular innovation. And all of a sudden that becomes a very, very strategic way in which you can leverage IP to be able to provide a service, being able to being able to have an advantage in certain procurement components of how service provider wants to procure. And it doesn't only apply in public sector. If you are engaging with the client and the client says, you know, I want to go look at 3 different quotations, and you can say, look, you can go look at 3 different quotations, but just know that whoever you're looking at is technically infringing on our patent, because we do have a patent for this particular a product or service or process that you are effectively wanting to procure from us. And you start to understand that all of a sudden, doesn't matter whether you're dealing with Ministry of Health in Namibia, Ministry of Health in South Africa, Ministry of Health in Eswatini, you're able to supply this particular patent to a procurement officer that then might be able to motivate to a board to say, okay, this is why this particular service provider has to have the sole right to provide this particular service. And the reality is, I mean, if you look at healthcare in particular, you look at most of the German manufacturers, especially providing services to South Africa, be able to have an unfair advantage over local entities, because they come into a market and they say, look, we have a patent that protects us. The government, you can't even go procure from a local entity in your own country because that entity is infringing. So it is about how you start to build IP as a strategic tool in procurement, in discussions, in being able to, and I think what we've learned is you being able to say, look, we have a patent protected solution. People understand that you've gone through the rigorous process of refining the technology, of proving novelty, of proving that like there's really, really great ingenuity in what you're offering. And I think as an entrepreneur, somebody who's sitting on the other side, hearing that you've gone through the process, all of a sudden feels like, okay, this business, despite the fact that it might be small, is credible. because they are going to be the company that's going to be worthwhile for the next 5 years to be able to provide this. And I think a lot of people, when they deal with startups, they're afraid of like, is this company going to be around for the next couple of years? And as much as the process of getting a patent takes time, but somebody just knowing that you've been at it for a while accrues that credibility to you, and is able to say, this company is worth supporting because I know they'll be around for the next couple of years. And I think another component around strategy and around using IP as a business tool is, if you're building a business worthwhile that you want to scale, there is a significant component that you need to address around how do you attract capital. And in most cases, if you're operating in the technology space, tech-based investors really are listening out for things like, does this entrepreneur have, sorry? Oh, so I think so.
Yeah. Can everyone please mute your mics? Please. Okay, proceed now.
Thank you. Yeah. So for instance, if you're engaging with an investor, and for instance, you're asking for, I don't know, 12 million rand, and this investor says, like, really, how do you justify the 12 million rand? In your due diligence process, in your evaluation of your company, all of a sudden, having a patent linked with that particular part enables you to increase your valuation, enables the investor to have a degree of comfort around why they should be investing in your business compared to another company that might be solving a similar problem with a less protected method. And because the investor is interested in what they're going to get out of this particular entity, when this entity either has to be sold or either has to be passed on to other owners and so on and so on, that investor has a vested interest to say, I want the valuation of this organization to grow. And all of a sudden, as a starting point, when you tell an investor that, look, this innovation has a patent that has been granted, or a patent that is in the process of review, the valuation of that organization inherently increases because the investor is able to see that this founder or this group of this management team is strategic around how they build this business into an asset of value that they can monetize in future. And I think it's these subtle signals that are important in the journey of an innovator wanting to position a innovation for scale. And I think what I like about patents as well is that, patents and other IP platforms, is that you get to a point where, right now we're in the process of engaging a partner in Jamaica, for instance. And because we are looking at licensing our software or licensing our platform, with the hardware, and they might want to manufacture our product locally that side, we're able to add an extra revenue line where we offer licensing agreements to partners that want to do exactly what we're doing. So all of a sudden, the IP protects somebody's ability to just outright copy you, but the ones that do want to copy are the ones that do want to do what you're doing. You can start offering licensing agreements that all of a sudden become strategic as a revenue service or as a revenue channel that you can accrue, even if you do not have the muscle, capital-wise or operational-wise, to go set an operational base in that particular country. And because the world is starting to, arrive at a point where partnerships are so significant, entering a licensing agreement with an IP in place enables you to be able to justify why you're charging that particular fee from a licensing agreement perspective. Whether it's a licensing agreement on an annual basis, or it's a licensing agreement on a per product basis, or licensing agreement on a per manufacturing basis. And I think COVID has been very interesting to highlight the reasons why patents are important. Obviously pharmaceuticals, we've always highlighted the importance of patents, but all of a sudden you're starting to arrive at a point where Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca are able to enjoy the ability to say, we want to produce our our products in different geographic reasons for political, for strategic business intents. But because we're able to license our IP to a manufacturer that produces it and then distributes it in that particular country, you give yourself so much more flexibility at a point where you're trying to figure out different pathways for scale for your particular business.
All right. Thank you very much, Nell, for that comprehensive response. And I think it really just, you've just put us through the golden thread of what it is to have IP and how it dictates the way you conduct business. And I think the biggest point is the value that you get going to an investor with confidence and saying, this is how much I want, and this is the value that I put to the table. And that's what IP can do for an SME. So I wanted to find out from William. William, as or from the funder's perspective, do you guys place a heavy weight on whether or not an SME has IP when you consider funding? Where is William? Okay, we'll park that for now until we can get William back online. For now, Ntutuko, can you please just tell us about your journey of taking your idea to market? So I understand, like, you had that appreciation for IP and what it can mean for your company. So how was the journey of taking it to market? So you protect it, and then from there, how do you, make sure that you get it commercialized and to the people that would be interested in it?
Kutlwano. Sorry, I wanted to add, I've been raising my hand.
Oh, no, just, do what you did now.
Yes, and then, sorry, Tutuko, I think I just want to add to what the previous speaker said. And I think I kept on hearing, patents are expensive, so I feel like I want to defend. But anyway, I wanted to share with the audience that, a lot of people might not be aware, but World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, they have a program where they are it's called Inventor Assistance Program, where, if you are an inventor from a particular country with limited resources, they are able to pair you with a patent attorney who is actually going to assist you in drafting your patent and filing your patent for you for free. So, what you have to do is try to find out if your country is part of that program. South Africa, I know it is part of that program. So we, as and my colleagues in the patent attorney field, we are able to provide, the drafting of patents for free. Obviously, you will have to go through whatever process that WIPO has put forth. So on that part of dealing with expenses, another thing that I wanted to mention is, after what Neo has said, I think if everybody can take the message of that IP is a business tool, and I like the way that Neo has put forward. He has illustrated that he used IP to support his business strategy. So that, for me, if all SMEs can see that, all that you have to do is you need to come up with a business strategy, and then you need to ask yourself a question as to how can IP assist me in meeting these business objectives. So that's how he's supposed to look at it. And I really, like how Neo has used IP in supporting its business objectives. He didn't just say, I just want to have a patent and frame it and put it somewhere there. That was not what he was looking for. He used IP to support his business objectives. And that's very important. And I would like all SMEs, if they can look at IP in that angle. It's not about just having a number of portfolios of IP portfolios and of patents, and just, you having patent certificates gathering dust somewhere. It's about how is this IP actually going to assist you in generating value or in meeting your business objectives. And last thing that I want to add is actually Ntutuko and maybe he respond to this. I think he's being very modest, and I would like him to share. He has a portfolio of trademarks, so I would like him to share with the people as to how did these trademarks assist him in going against some of the big names in South Africa, who were trying to sort of steal his brand. So I think that would be a good thing if you can share that experience with some of the SMEs.
Okay, thank you. How much longer do we have you for? I saw that William was back, so I wanted him to answer that question quickly, and then we can get back to the question at hand.
Sure. Okay, I'll jump it. I'll do both. I'll try. I normally can take a whole day to answer a question, but I'll try and squeeze it into 3 minutes.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah. So I think with the patent done, then the work of then starting and getting the business off the ground then started. It wasn't like patent and tomorrow we're starting. It was gradual, but I knew that I'm working towards an end goal. So for me it was start find a farm, because my idea was that the world can have a new method of investing in livestock, and there's a way that we can operate this system that in which people can invest in a cow, then it has a calf, and the calf becomes profits, and that's the same system could be applied to livestock such as cows or goats or even camels as well.
Wow.
So I'd just break the problem down into small pieces, focus on cows only for now, focus on cows, rented a farm, which was it's just a story, a 10-minute story on its own, but we found a farm and a great farmer. Most importantly as well, like we could share the idea more openly as well with anyone, knowing that, okay, all right, if they want to go cooperate, it's fine, good luck to them. We could share the story openly with anyone, and we say, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to get people to invest in cows and own them, even though they live in the city and it's their assets, and it grows up in value. So we could share it more openly. So then we found a great farmer who believed in the idea as well, and today is still part of our advisory board. So he then farmed for us the first group of cattle, 40 cattle that we started off with, and then I got some mates of mine to create a website. They took really a really terrible website. If I look at the website we did, I'm ashamed of it, but it worked. But it worked. They took a clothing retail website. We removed the clothes, we put the cows, and then we linked it to PayPal and the credit card system, and it worked. And we were able to launch in October 2015. And then we called the press. Really, we made a big hoo-ha about our thing, because one thing, if you don't believe in your idea, no one will. You've got to just be so consumed with your idea until proven otherwise. You've got to be totally consumed. So we called the newspapers, the Sunday Times, SABC, ENCA. We told them, guys, it's a new way of investing, and it's not the stock exchange, it's the livestock exchange. And they loved it and they caught on to it. But there's been lots of ups and downs, roller coasters in between, like other stuff that we, but the business has grown since now. We are managing about $8 million of assets, which is cattle, trees, gardens on the platform.
Wow, talking dollars here, yeah.
No, we don't deal with rands.
Okay. So tell us about what Dumelo just alluded to now. you were right in saying that it's got its own ups and downs. So, and obviously, if you have a good idea, people are going to want to imitate what you're doing. So, how did having your trademark portfolio and your patents help you? That like what happened?
Sure. So we own. So the good thing about this trademarks and registering them is that just register them. Like we registered almost all our trademarks. We registered them in 2015. Some of them we registered them before we even started the business. For example, like we own the trademark called crowd farming. And then one big company, I'm not going to mention name, they got bigger, more money than us. Try to use the same.
Don't mention.
Word. Yeah. Try to use the same word in their app, etc. And we wrote them a letter, that they are infringing. And funny enough, they were represented by Adams and Adams.
Okay, that's enough of that company. Now let's talk about how Tshaya Mashabela Attorneys has assisted you.
Yeah, but it was Tshaya against Adams. Now it was Tshaya Adams, and we hit them really big. So then they ceased and desist. That's the beauty of this thing. There's laws governing this thing. If you believe my patent is not worthy, you must prove that it's incorrect. And it's your job to prove it. Because I did my job in convincing the patent master that my idea is worth patent. So that's how we've there was one big one, and then there was another one as well. I think people just take chances and they don't do their IP checks. So it's always important to keep it. Like I've got an IP file where all our trademarks, patents sits. Whenever I see something, I'm like, okay, hey, that looks like, why are they using BitCow? BitCow, that's my trademark. I registered it in 2015. What are you doing? And then quickly I write a letter and I like, cease and desist. Then they have to stop. If they don't stop, we try them.
Yeah, I think in Tutugo you should present a masterclass on how SMEs can really take advantage of intellectual property rights to protect themselves against the big companies. It's a class act. Thank you for that. William, is William here now? Dr. Mudisa King. As soon as William gave us the funder's perspective, now can you tell us of instances? Did you also have instances where you've had to defend yourself against like copycats in the industry?
I think there was some background on it. I didn't hear that.
I was saying, did you also find that you had instances where you had to deal with copycats in the industry?
Not yet, but I feel that I'm getting there quite soon. So definitely that masterclass is I'm looking forward to it. And then I definitely think that like it is important that the let's say your copyright does become a barrier, and it has to be a significant barrier. Look, I understand that there are other people that might want to solve a similar problem, but using different means and different methods. So I definitely feel fine with that. But I definitely also know that because we've created this pathway for partnership as well, which has been very, very strategic for us to say, hey, if you do want to copy, just get a license from us, because there is that particular pathway to say, let's formalize it, let's help you. Do we help you with setting up a manufacturing? You could buy from us our product, and then you can have distribution rights in a particular market. I feel like just going through a process of creating flexibility around how you can monetize that particular IP is very, very important. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have to be very adamant that our innovation, yes, belongs to us, but technically belongs to the patients or the clients that effectively want to get value from it. And our job is to be able to figure out how do we build a monetization component that facilitates that to happen. Because I think now in the context of like, if somebody in Niger or in Algeria wants to do what we're doing, should we not find a way to enable them to do it excellently with all of the insights and information that we've had, and then be able to figure out what components of our IP we can license?
Kutlwano, William says he's having connection problems.
Okay, so it's fine.
Again.
Let me just put this question through to Ayanda then. I hope Ayanda is there. Did he also disappear? What?
I'm here.
Are you here? Okay, so Ayanda, I know you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and SMEs when it comes to funding, and you've worked with like the big organizations such as your IDCs and so forth. Do you find that they are more swayed to fund an idea if there's intellectual property rights involved?
Thank you very much, Kutlwana, for that. Definitely, yes. And for the reasons that have been mentioned, earlier, in terms of how, IP provides, a competitive advantage, but also it serves as a validation as well, of the merits of the idea itself, So you'd find that actually with most funders, they feel a bit much more comfortable, if something has been protected, because they actually know that, there's been validation of that, in terms of, it being a good idea. And secondly, they're reasonably certain that, the chances of success tend to be higher, right? Because you're sort of preventing, sort of anybody else from coming into the field, and therefore you are, it's better returns, for them. It's just funders all around, not just the public funders, but also investors, angel investors, and the VC firms, they actually, focus on that, right? But also remember, it's not only about, the IP per se, right? But also the team behind, the people behind the idea, that they're also putting their money into. Certainly IP is a component, but also the people behind the idea. That's also another very, very important component, around this. I mean, you could see, from the conversations that we've had, the passion that Neo, displayed, when talking about this idea, and it's something that, you can judge from him that he can talk for hours on this, right? So there's passion there in actually getting, the stuff, out there. That's also a very, very big plus, in making those sort of funding decisions. But also, I wanted to touch on some issue that was mentioned earlier on. Perhaps pose a question, right? And there is the WIPO bit, right, which is the Inventor Assistance Program, right? But I've also heard something that is very interesting from both Florence and Yvonne, right? In terms of how they provide this kind of assistance. Florence mentioned preferential pricing, in a sense, in a way, but making sure that you don't charge them a lot, right? But you, in a way, you are assisting them, you're investing them in them. And Yvonne mentioned something that's quite interesting, that you offer this kind of service, at no cost at all, to the IP creators. I'm sure that's the advice on some of these things. And I just wonder, right? I just wonder if we, at some point in time, we're getting to a stage where we see what some of the things that are happening, for instance, in some of the, Silicon Valley and other areas that have been happening for quite a while, where, IP law firms, they meet an entrepreneur who may not have the resources, or that others may have. I think, perhaps Neo and I think Tutugo mentioned something else, that he was running a business, right? And get to a stage where they actually begin to put their mouth into this if they believe that the idea is good, and actually they provide that kind of assistance in return for some shares in the company, in a sense that actually helps, because they've got a law firm that is behind you all the way, because they would have an interest, in the success of your business. I wonder if it's something that we may be getting there, maybe Tumelo, going forward as one of the mechanisms that we have at our disposal, to actually supporting, sort of SMEs, get to the next level. Is it a possibility at all?
Florence and Yvonne, would you consider that as opposed to full-on pro bono?
And that would be a good strategy. Like we noted earlier, it's all about helping the SMEs, idea owners to go out there and maximize. And at the end of the day, it adds values, not just to them, but to the entire economy, including the lawyers, because when businesses grow, we thrive.
Yvonne?
Yes, it is a very, it's an excellent suggestion, yes. However, most of those inquiries, they usually just fizzle along the way. They are not sustained for some reason. Very few have gone all the way, but it is a it is something that one should consider. Yes, thank you.
Thanks. And Tumelo, I know you're a shrewd businesswoman. Does this whet your appetite?
No, no, I'm not a shrewd businesswoman. Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, but I mean, you then start thinking how many, ideas are you going to invest in and take ownership, and then you need to look at a possibility of, conflicts of interest. How do you assess whether you're a patent attorney? How do you then, because any investor that takes up investment in a company, they get an opportunity to do due diligence and assess the value or the possible value of that company. So it would mean that then we are entering into another business. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but I guess we will really need to think about it. I mean, in law, we have, contingency agreements where attorneys are able to assist, other your clients on the understanding that once the matter is settled, you get a certain percentage of the settlement value. So you take the risk, you buy into the risk. So I guess even on this one, there's quite a number of considerations that we will have to look into. But I think as attorneys, honestly, we as patent attorneys, I know myself, there's quite a lot of pro bono work that I do. There's quite a lot of free work that, like I said, pro bono work that I do to a small business. And like Florence also said, and Yvonne said, and even us as patent attorneys, let's say in South Africa, some of us have volunteered in being part of this WIPO assistance program. So we also need to bear in mind that, we are also in trying to establish businesses. So I think the government also needs to come into the party in assisting the inventors to ensure that they are able to afford IP protection. Right. But I think at a later stage, I will share some of the things that do not even require money in order for you to protect your IP. So it doesn't mean that, and I think that's a misconception that everybody assumes that IP protection means patenting only, and you need to incur the cost. There are other ways in which you can actually manage your IP without having this.
Sorry to interrupt. We need to get to the other questions now. We're running out of time, and there's still so much that I'd like to put forward to the panel. For anyone who wants to hear more about Tumelo's advice on how you can protect your IP without needing so much money, We're going to provide the panelists' contact details. You can contact them. And again, for the participants, please post your question in the chat section. I see that there are people who've raised their hands. I will definitely put all your questions forward to the panelists as soon as we've done with the questions. So please just put down your questions in the chat section, and then I'll put it through to the panel. There's a question that I wanted to ask now.
Kutlwano, if I may just say, I'm back.
Okay.
Jesus Christ. I couldn't have a worse day to have such an important meeting. We've got a power failure, Wi-Fi is dying, and I'm running around like a headless chicken. But I'm back, and I thought when I lost you, you were asking me questions about what funders could be possibly looking for.
Yes, exactly. And like, what weight do you place on the presence of intellectual property?
Look, we do place. I think Neo was speaking, and I couldn't help. When Neo was speaking, I couldn't help but smile, because he is one of our companies that we incubated the Innovation Hub. And the points that he was raising were such points of such importance when it comes to IP. I mean, if you're looking at government and what Neo just said, I mean, it just puts you so high above of everybody else if you've got intellectual property immediately, because if you don't have intellectual property protection, you will have to suffer, and your specification will have to be taken and be provided to other people who are going to literally copy and bid with you in the same bid using your own spec, Mm-hmm. So I mean, what he said is important. But what we also look for, it means it just puts you at a place where you can compete with others, and it puts some seriousness to your invention. Of course, there are certain things that we look at. It brings some credibility to the subject matter that we are talking about. It gives us comfort as funders that someone looked at the subject matter, someone did a search on novelty, someone did search on and how inventive is this thing, someone looked at the validity of what you're looking at. So especially in those jurisdictions where examination of patents is conducted. Unfortunately, South Africa is still behind in that regard. We quickly catching up with examination. But if you have international patents and you've had some sort of examination on the patents, it does give you a lot of weight. Of course, if you're in South Africa and you've worked with companies like Tshaya Mashabela, and you've worked with other companies and law firms, it helps us to know that someone looked at the flow of rights, okay? So someone did take time to see, okay, ownership issues, were there assignments, who owns this thing, were there recordals, in terms of license agreements, how valid is your license? Neo spoke about license agreements, licensing out being a source of revenue. Are you licensing out to others? What revenue channels are coming through into your company? So it provides us multiple levels of looking at these things. So we look at who are you, but we also look at what do you have, all right? So on the other hand, it helps us to at least be able to establish some kind of value. What is it that you have? Value. What is it that you have? How much is it? And all these things help us to come to a price. At the end of the day, the value that you place is determined by that intellectual property. And so intellectual property valuation also plays a major role in putting a price tag on your invention. I think those are the important ones. So for us, we do due diligence and we look at all these things and say, what is it that you have, and who are you, and do you have that right? Does it vest on you? And what is it that you actually have?
Yes. And William, I know you guys also have quite a few support programs to help innovators protect their ideas, correct? And help them to pre-commercialization.
Yeah, so I think Nell will attest to this. So what we do is, someone, I think it was Florence, who said that they really would like to be involved in the businesses when they start. All right. When somebody says, now we're going to look at developing 1, 2, 3, and they want to be involved there. I mean, so we on the other side are saying we want to be involved. We want to know what you are doing, and right at the start. So we provide that service. We've got an internal intellectual property specialist. We've got myself, and we take someone through. I think in my notes, I always write this, that people must understand that registered intellectual property procedures provide us with one of the most properly arranged technological tech libraries. Okay, so these are technology libraries, and they should be exploited by our people to make sure that, number one, they cut the cost of research and development. Number two, that it will put them at the forefront of technology. So we provide these services where we do infringement searches, where we do novelty searches, validity searches, and we look at this, and we provide the service free of charge, by the way. And we've got panelists like Tumelo, we call them mentors, like Tumelo. We've got Jabulani Mtombeni, we've got Brian and others who are actually mentors, IP mentors to our companies. We pay for this service, and we allocate a certain time for these companies to interact with our mentors, and we pay for that. Okay. There are other supports that you get from TIA, DTI, CEDA, and GEP, and all those that help people to at least carry the cost of intellectual property initially.
All right, thank you very much for that, William. And again, to the participants, we'll be providing information for Tshaya Mashabela Attorneys, for Dr. Modisa King's organization that helps entrepreneurs, and also for those with an interest in doing business in Southern Nigeria, Florence and Yvonne are there. So now I want to move to my next question, and this is the rate of SMEs protecting their ideas in, let's start with Europe. We have an expert from Europe joining us to talk about the extent of SMEs protecting their ideas, maybe more specifically in France. Natalie, are you there? Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, John, I just want to suggest that we all go back on mute again.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Please, everyone, mute except for Natalie. Hi, Natalie. Welcome.
Hello, Kutrano. Hi, everybody. I just have to say sorry for my English, but I'll start with this.
Natalie, I think your volume is a little bit low.
A bit low. Okay. Is it okay now? No.
Just increase it a bit more.
And like this. Oh, maybe I have to speak a bit low.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to get back on some figures about SMEs and the importance how they file on they get employment. I want to say that Africa deals with the same problem with European as comparing to SMEs. And in Europe, we can say that SMEs is 99% of companies. This 99% of companies create like about 66% of, not percent, employments. They create jobs, it's 66%, so it's a lot. But when it came to patent application, only 18% file patent application. So they don't have the culture of filing patent application. So it's the same thing as Africa. And what I wanted also to say is when they want to file a patent application, most of the time they make partnership with other companies to file the patent application. For example, they will go to external business partnership like with university, another company who deal with the same products, for example. And also if they want to go abroad, because the thing is with filing patent application is about the money also. If I want also to add some figures about European countries, it's not the same figures. For example, France, we have 21% of French company who files patent application. This is not the same amount with the German companies. German companies file about, I can say 57% of patent application. You see, it's huge, the difference.
Yeah, that is a big difference. So do you have any idea why there's such a big difference between French companies and German companies? I suppose SMEs that file.
I think we have also to think about the difference between SMEs. In SMEs, we have also what we call the startup. A startup for some countries are not the same. They are not considered the same way. We have a lot of startups in France, which are not considered as SMEs. And these startups sometimes, they struggle to find the money to file the patent application. And I don't think it's the same thing with the German. The German, now in France, we started to change the law and to help startups and sometimes SMEs to find funds, money to file the patent application. And I don't know how it works in German, but I think maybe they started to support the SMEs earlier than in France, if I can say.
Wow, thank you very much for that perspective. Thanks. It really is an eye-opener. And Yvonne and Florence, I think let's start with Florence. Can you please tell us how this is in terms of the Nigerian perspective? Then we'll move to Yvonne.
For Nigeria, Nigeria, as we know, is the largest economy in Africa. It's ranked 26th in the world. And by a survey, the statistics based on the current one that I think was taken in 2017, the total number of enterprises in Nigeria was approximately 4.1 billion enterprises, businesses, million businesses, broken into segments. You have the micro taking 99.82%, the small businesses 0.17%, medium you have 0.004%. And although the small businesses constitute the lowest, they actually contribute about 48% to the GDP. But unfortunately, despite the highlighted benefits of protecting IPs, SMEs in Nigeria are still very, very slow at taking steps, proactive steps to protect their IPs. And again, like every other person has said, especially Tumelo, comes down to awareness. Beyond the cost that we've been talking about, I think the main issue is the awareness. Do they actually understand what they have? Do they understand the value of the asset they are sitting on? Do they understand the capital advantage that they have? They don't. So most of them, they set up the small businesses, and the first consideration is I've registered the business at the company's registry level, and that is okay. I can go to the market. Not considering that anything can go wrong. Somebody else can pick that brand, that name, register it. Somebody else can pick up on that idea that if you muted and run with it. And even like I tell people, even beyond before you even talk about registering, at the time you enter into discussions with anybody concerning these ideas, this one will not cost you nothing. Try as much as possible to execute a non-disclosure agreement, non-disclosure, non-circumvention agreement, so that even if anything goes wrong, that business discussions that you are moving around is not going to work. the danger of somebody running with your ideas and you are saying it how many months, how many years down the line in the marketplace is not there. So the reason why SMEs, for me in Nigeria in particular, and I think it's across the globe and developing countries generally, is that level of awareness is not there. Beyond cost, cost is there. It's a challenge, because before they can think of branding, trademarking, and patenting and all of that, they are looking at it, okay, my overhead costs generally, do I really need it? And that is where the issue is. Do they really understand that they need to do that? They need to protect their ideas. Yes. So for Nigeria, SME, IP filings, registrations, protections are still very, very low compared to the volume of SME businesses in the system.
Very true. Awareness is a very key issue. And Yvonne, what are the stats looking like in Botswana?
Botswana, we the IP lawyers, we are filing we're filing quite a number of patents and trademarks from outside the country, the foreign patents and trademarks. But locally, we out of 10 for Botswana entrepreneurs, which are the young minds, the youthful entrepreneurs, and the so far the database is estimated around 40,000 for trademarks only, but patents is very low. This thing is attributed mostly to lack of awareness, but it's also that with the way government has made such impressive steps to establish institutions to facilitate innovation, science and technology, and in a move to be a knowledge-based economy, because that is part of our vision. And so being part of the education is part of the education of Botswana. The schools, the tertiary schools, are very active in innovation. So the innovativeness of Botswana is it's vibrant. However, the protection is various degrees. Patenting, very low. Trademarks, relatively high, impressive. Indigenous knowledge, not too impressive. More can be done. Basically, I believe that with the promotion of the access and benefit sharing, the processes of accessing the natural resources in order to produce products is kind of taking a slow snail pace, but there are different pockets of IP everywhere in different stakeholders, government, institutions, academia, and the business world. There's a need for stronger linkage. We are working at one hand not knowing what the other hand is doing. The linkages, we need to linkage with each other. But in general, those SMEs that are already under the purview of the science parks and all, BIH, Botswana Innovation Hub, LEAS, they are more at an advantage than those that are outside that S&T sectors. But there is a need to fast track, because we are moving away from a mineral economy to a knowledge-based economy, where where we need to implement and disseminate information around the value chain of commercialization and industries that SMEs may exploit. Because with the COVID era, it has the gap has widened. You know, the gap was there, but now it has widened, and you know, there's a need to speed track, you know, this to elevate the citizenship, the citizens, and reduce poverty, because, you know, the poverty has actually it has taken its toll on the citizenry. We are only 2 million in Botswana, around 2 million. Yes, but we are very active on filing protections, IP protections from outside the country, So I must commend the SIPA, because they have taken a big stride and taken it to the public through social media. On World IP Day, they had this Facebook campaigns, and it's working. It's definitely working. Yes, and just the support structures, they would need to you know, ensure that they take the, you know, expedite that you know, the entrepreneur, reduce, especially reduction of poverty among the graduates and the working class and all. Yes.
Thank you very much for that perspective, Yvonne. William, you wanted to add something?
I think one of the biggest things that can help us with awareness is how the courts deal with their matters. I think the biggest inquiry when it comes to whether you're going to file in a country or not has to do with the track record that you have in the courts in those countries on infringement issues. So I know, for instance, that a lot of African countries will rather have trademarks, depend on trademarks and counterfeit laws to enforce, simply because the courts are not accessible in as far as patent infringement is concerned. So I think if we can have the courts accessible, and the courts being active, and the courts being accessible in terms of cost, and publication of infringement matters that are brought before the courts and how they are dealt with, that will go a long way in improving the profile of how intellectual property is dealt with in these countries, including South Africa. I think South Africa is quite, the print and social media is quite active in the publication of cases that have to do with intellectual property. So someone who goes, the applicant or the patentee or whoever it is, the proprietor, comes in very, very confident that there will be, the courts are accessible and the cost is not prohibitive. Thank you, Gutman.
Thank you for that, William. It's almost time for us to wrap up now, and I still want to get to the questions. So for any participant that has a question, please do just send through in the chat section, and then I'm going to put it through to the panelists. For the panelists, please think about your closing remarks and what you want the participants to take away from this. In the meantime, Ayanda, I would like you to please tell us about this exciting development at UNISA, being that you guys have established an incubator, and what this means for collaboration with SMEs.
Thank you very much, Kutlwano. I just posed a question, a very interesting question, a question to what what William said. Perhaps we can start there, William. I just want to get your sense. Maybe Tumelo as well, and Florence, and maybe can weigh in on this. All right. I'm sure you're familiar with this call me back. Is it call back? Call me back. Call me back case.
Clearly, you don't use please call me. It's please call me.
Oh yeah, please call me. The please call me case. That has sort of been in our courts for quite a while, and it has gone through different stages. Up to the Constitutional Court and back, right? I just want to check. From your sense, to what extent has this been impacting on the view that the courts are accessible in our space, particularly for IP cases?
Yeah, I think Tumelo is the attorney here, and the rest should be able to talk on it. But I think that the problem here is that we should understand that, according to me, that issue is not necessarily an intellectual property case. According to me, it's Tumelo must tell, because I think it deals with contracts and agreements between parties, although it relates to intellectual property. And it talks mainly to inventorship, if we had to put it aside. This has been going on for a very long time now. Makate has now spent, the please call me guy has now spent lots of money. He ended up in the Constitutional Court. I think the Constitutional Court threw him under the bus, because the Constitutional Court, what it did to him, it allowed who he had named as the infringer to determine how much he's going to pay him. So the court said, go back to MTN, to Vodacom, and let Vodacom decide how much they owe you. But he was the complainant, and Vodacom was on the other side. So I think that it has, in a way, highlighted the cost of accessing the courts, where one is aggrieved, and it is a big problem. But it has also shown that an ordinary man, provided that he has money, can access the courts and access them to the highest court in the land, and the big guy can actually face Goliath.
Yeah, I agree with you there, William. It shows that David can indeed face Goliath. Tumelo, did you want to add anything?
Okay, yes, I agree with William that the case, it's not about IP. It is more about, and it was not, they were not even disputing inventorship. He created this thing. It was more about, they promised to pay him, and nobody was willing to pay him. So it's not a good example of an IP case, IP related case. But I agree with you guys in that, access to the courts, it's not cheap. Unfortunately, it is very costly to litigate. That is why, us as patent attorneys, we always, or as attorney, you always advise a client that let litigation be the last resort, because it's not a cheap exercise. However, this for me, it takes me to that point of saying that, let's say if there was an IP related case, and for me, had you protected your IP, it would actually become cheaper to ensure that the other person doesn't infringe, because it would be easy for us to prove ownership. We have already filed a patent. It's very easy. I mean, like what Dutugo said, yes, there were a number of big guns that were using his brand, but because he had went the steps of obtaining a trademark, it was relatively cheap on his side. All we had to do was to write a letter of demand, and the people stopped using that particular trademark. So it takes me to that point of saying sometimes you might think you're saving, but actually you're not saving when it comes to infringement. So the bottom line is that litigation, it's not an easy it's not a cheap exercise to go through. I don't know how it will ever be changed, but I think entrepreneurs and small business, what they can do for themselves is at least try to start protecting and managing their IP, so that if push comes to shove, somebody's infringing, it becomes a relatively easy or cheaper exercise for you to pursue than had you not protected your intellectual property.
Thanks, Tumelo, for that. So
I think if I may just have a last comment. Tumelo, one thing you keep saying that people don't actually understand why you say it is easier. It's because different works like patents, trademarks, copyright, they've got therein embedded setting out what is infringement.
Yes.
What are the acts of infringement? It has therein which court do you approach. It has therein how do you approach that court. It even tells you what your prayer must be when you approach that court, and what relief is due. It could be due to you. So you won't be going all around in terms of common law when you're looking for these things. The acts that are dedicated to each set of the works that are protected in that law guides you clearly as to which court you go to. How do you approach that court? Is it an application procedure? What relief can be sought? So it's very interesting that when you have intellectual property, the lines and the passages of intellectual property.
Thanks, William. Those are very valid points, and I think that goes into what Immaculate was asking. Immaculate was asking, what are the risks of not protecting your IP? So Immaculate, if you're still with us, please just let us know if your question has been answered. Do you have any follow-up questions in terms of the risks? So let's move to another question. This question is directed at Neo. Neo.
Yeah.
So Muso wanted to know if your startup was an NPO, and if so, how your funding model works.
Effectively, we have a PTY structure, and
so
we also have a
company.
So maybe, yeah. So we have a PTY structure, and then we have an NPC structure. There are some activities that we do under the NPC, and then there are some activities that we do under the PTY. So we operate as a hybrid.
Interesting. No, like how do you operate as a hybrid between, like, how does that work? I'm also curious.
So it depends on what you're trying to do. So because we have a mandate to provide impact for communities that we operate in. On the NPC, we would technically operate similar to what a nonprofit would do in terms of raising donation, raising funds, putting in assets in communities that the funder wants to support, and effectively delivering impact that particular way. On the for-profit, we would operate as a normal business.
Okay, thank you very much for that. No, and then the next question, but Tusi wants to know, what role, if any, does IP policy play in the development of SMEs? So I'll put this forward to Tumelo, Yvonne, and Florence. You guys can take that. Maybe Ayanda as well.
Can you repeat it? What role? Are they relating to an IP policy of the country or an IP policy of the SME?
But Tusi, I think Batusi might have meant IP policy within a company, but maybe we can touch a bit on, but on the country, but not too long.
Yeah. Okay. So, as a country, most countries, and which is a good thing that we've seen that African countries are now moving into establishing national IP policies, and these policies they sort of like give position of IP or what that country, how that country views IP. So basically, it's sort of like it gives us a guide on how that country is supposed to be dealing with IP within a country. That's a good question, because a lot of companies, I know they don't have IP policy, but the IP policy is going to give you, it's sort of like a guide on how you are actually going to manage IP within your company. So what happens is that you would have an IP, ideally you should have an IP strategy. This IP strategy, you should have developed it based on your business strategy. So you have a business strategy, and then you develop an IP strategy which supports the business objectives, and then you develop an IP policy that is more of, that gives more of a meat or more of the guides or more of what to do whenever your employees encounter IP. How is IP protected? How do you make decisions on whether or not to protect IP? What are the monitoring steps that are involved? Who is involved? Who are the parties who are supposed to be protecting this particular IP? So it is a good practice for a company to have an IP policy, and I'm happy you're asking about it, because I think a lot of companies do not see the need for an IP policy, but an IP policy will assist you in ensuring that you actually get to manage your IP effectively and efficiently.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thanks, Batusi, for that question. Florence, did you want to add anything to that?
Nothing much to add. Tumelo has said everything, and just like she said, for the national IP policy, it helps the country to identify the IP assets in the economy and how they want to strategize in terms of maximizing those assets for economic growth and how they should be handled, dealt with globally and all of that. And at the intra level, within the company, within the businesses, of course, starting from the IP strategy, and it's always very, very important that before you begin to think about blowing out, going out, stepping out in the market, sit down and have an understanding. What exactly do I want to achieve with this idea? What problem do I want to solve? How can I hedge in a way that I'm not exposed and I'm not even under attack for stepping on toes, for infringing? Inside the system as well, like Tumelo said, you have employees, you have other stakeholders. How do you protect those ideas from exposure, from unnecessary risk? It all boils down to understanding the risk aspect of what we are doing. So the IP policy at the national level within the businesses is very, very important and can never, never be overemphasized.
Thank you for that. And then Lunga wants to know, how much does it cost to file a patent? Let's start with Yvonne, then Florence, then Tumelo. So Lunga, we're giving you the price range from Botswana, Nigeria, and South Africa. Ayanda, did you add something? Sorry, Yvonne.
Yeah, Ayanda. Yes, I wanted to add, just maybe to throw in something else in this conversation about national IP policy, right? It's well and good to have the administrative side sorted out, right? But also I think that there's got to be some strategic decision being made there. There's something that Neo mentioned right at the beginning, right? And I thought I'll pick up on it, when he was talking about his innovation and his journey, right? And I think it's something that people talk about, but it never really gains traction, in terms of how do you ensure, particularly for new technologies, how do we ensure that we've got enabling procurement policies, particularly at the government level, to enable somebody that comes with something new that has never been seen before to be able to get in, right? So the government is able to procure that, because now all of a sudden they said, well, they want 3 codes, right? Or 150 codes, or whatever number of quotations that people require. And I think it's something that it's been in conversation for quite a while, and I think it's something that should form part of any national conversation, particularly around national IP policies. So how do we then assist the innovators? How to assist entrepreneurs to actually find foothold in the marketplace? And of course, governments sometimes they play a role of facilitating this, and they've got to make sure that this is something that happens.
Ayanda, what I think here is, if I may, Kutlwano, that perhaps we must also get a model that works, okay? And say to ourselves, perhaps apart from just procurement, why doesn't government use open exchange kind of programs where government will go out there and put a program out? We've got at the Innovation Hub, we've got what we call the Open Innovation Exchange, where we put challenges out and say, as government, pipes, and the pipes are getting blocked with fat. How do we solve the problem? And let the entrepreneurs bid on that and say, this is how we're going to solve the problem, and this is how we're going to do at what cost, and then it's open. All right. The problem is when the technology that is going to be employed in there is not covered in terms of intellectual property, okay? Then you may have a problem. So intellectual property will bring an extra line of protection in saying that although we've got this, we're going to solve it. I'm going to be using a patented solution, a protected system or whatever. It also puts the entrepreneur at one level. But you are right that we need to see how does government plan to solve its problems. But remember that a lot of these are not necessarily solved when the tender is opened. No. An entrepreneur would have gone, would have identified the problem, would have provided a solution, whether it's a queuing, queue management system or whatever it is. The entrepreneur would have independently went, and that's the true mark of an entrepreneur, independently went and recognized this as a problem and wanted to solve it. And once it is solved, we need to really ask ourselves, how do we open it up? And people always forget that in government, you can get what you call a sole supplier motivation, which government people must do. But the requirement there is that you should have tested the market. So when I go and I say, I'm going to procure this, and I'm going to procure it from Neo, someone is going to ask me, why Neo? And I say, because I have tested the market. I have went out on the newspaper, I've asked for the solution. People came back, but they were all in infringement of Neo's invention. Therefore, we must go with NEO because anyone who is licensed by NEO to provide the solution. So, it's a tricky one that we'll have to solve.
Thank you very much, guys. So actually, Batusi has since come back to me and explained that she wanted to know about company IP policy. But it's good. I think it's good to have a holistic perspective because company IP policies operate within the bigger ecosystem of national policy. So in the interest of time, can we please move to Lunga's question, because we've also got another very interesting question from Yongama. So let's get to Lunga. He wants to know the cost of filing a patent. So I put the question through to Yvonne, and then Florence, you'll tell us how much that could cost in Nigeria, and Tumelo in South Africa.
I think I don't know about you ladies, but personally, I think it's honestly, I don't think it's something that we will be able to respond to. I think if somebody wants us to quote them on the filing of a patent, because it depends on the technology. It depends on the how easy that the solution is. So there's quite a lot of things that we consider. So I would say if somebody would love us as Tshaya Mashabela to give you a quote, you rather contact us and we will be able to give you a quote based on the technological information that you would have given us. I don't know about you ladies.
Absolutely, I agree with you, because beyond even the filing is the last stage of the whole process. You still have some preliminaries, and that can change the figures as you proceed. So
yes,
it's difficult to sit down and tell you that this is the figure.
Yes. And the drafting of a patent, I mean, it takes a number of hours, and then it takes, like I said, your technical capability as a patent attorney. So it will vary. A simple mechanical related invention versus a pharmaceutical related invention would not cost the same.
Ayanda is throwing you under the bus and asking for a ballpark figure.
It includes, you know, it would involve government fees versus professional fees,
yes,
administrative fees. So if you're filing,
it's more slippery than an eel. What?
I think
Next question.
No, did you want to add something else there?
There's Natalie then provided the response, you know.
Yeah.
Let's see what Natalie says. So Natalie says in Europe it's between 3,000 and 8,000 euros. So if I were to
Thank you, Natalie.
So now if I were to do a quick conversion for you guys, just give me a second. Between 3,000 and 8,000 euros.
This price comprising the official taxes and drafting the patent application. But in France, you can have like an inventor who can try to draft his patent application himself and pay about 500 euros go to the French patent office. But the thing is, when you pay this official taxes, which is about 500 euros, problems came around because they don't know how to draft a patent application. So this is why we said it's between 3,000 and 8,000, because it's not only about the official taxes, it's the time you spend to draft the patent application, to understand the solution, and to have the interview with the inventors, and to reply to the office action and everything.
So thanks for that, Natalie. Thanks a lot. And Natalie is talking 3,000 to 5,000 euros, not rands. So if you go to Dumelo Yvonne and they charge you other figures and you say, but Natalie said 3,000, it's euros. So it's between 54,000 rand and 144,000 rand, just to do the quick conversion. So now let's see. Lunga, I hope that answers your question. But this is a more complicated answer, because you can also file, like instead of filing in an individual European country, you can file through the Patent Cooperation Treaty, where you can then enter into national phase, you know, in the countries where you want protection. But that's not for me to tell you. If you want any further information, please feel free to contact Tshaya Mashabela Attorneys. Please feel free to contact Florence and Yvonne, and they'll give you the perspective on how to file in their respective countries. So now we move to, let's see, Kama wants to know how. Hello? Yes, Ayanda, is that you or is that William?
No, it was me. The next question was from Bukhoba. Well, how feasible is the process for temporary patent without assistance of an attorney?
You know,
Okay.
I mean, the attorneys were supposed to answer. But I always say to what we see on this side is a guy will come with a self-drafted provisional application, okay? And I tell you that if you want Natalie, for instance, to file for you in France claiming priority from the South African document, you may be found to be wanting, okay? So I always say that, remember that what you are going to file here must use the appropriate language that is not limiting. It must not be claiming things that are not that are excluded from patentability. All these things must be considered, because now you're going to have, you want to claim priority from a document which is not sufficient. So I would say that always get a professional to draft a provisional patent application, because it's going to be your base document, especially if you're going to be filing PCT and other countries. Okay, so we see on this side that we've got this guy that comes and he thinks he's got this provisional patent application and he walks so proud and tall, and he comes here and I just have to put water on his fire and tell him, dude, this is not worth anything. It's not even worth the paper it's written on. So you know, I always advise people that get professional advice when you want to write to get this this what we call provisional patent application. Remember that the provisional application is not the end in itself, but it provides basis for what you want to do in the future. And Tumelo is going to laugh at this, but you know when attorneys are being trained, Kuklano, you would know that you must be able to protect the pith and marrow of the invention, and you know there's a pith and marrow test. So you need to have the core of what you want to protect in this so-called temporary, we call it provisional patent. So it's very important. It's an important document going forward.
Can I add? Thanks, William. I think I agree with what you're saying, and for me, it pains me where most of the times I see, young entrepreneurs and coming and saying, Tumelo, can you help us with filing a complete patent application? Bear in mind, in South Africa, you as an inventor or the owner of the invention, you can file your own provisional patent application, as well as a patent attorney can assist you. However, in South Africa, you can't file a complete patent application as an individual or as the owner. Only a patent attorney can file a complete patent application for you. So what I'm saying is that it pains me when an entrepreneur has filed for themselves, and when they come to me and they want to file a complete application, and I say, unfortunately, we can't file it because what you think or what you intended to put on your provisional, you did not include it. So I can't file a complete because you didn't. There's no basis on which I can file the complete application. And I always tell people that you can always take your, what is this tooth in the back? You can take it out, but sometimes you go to a qualified practitioner to take it out for you. And for me, that's the same with the patent attorney. There's nothing wrong in filing for yourself, but just appreciate the risk in that you might think that you have actually protected your invention only to find out that you haven't. And by that time, there's nothing that I can do because you have started disclosing that invention. So I can't even try to refile because now the invention is already out there to the public. Mm-hmm. One advice that I can give to the people, because it's relatively cheap in South Africa to file for yourself, is 60 Rand. So what I can advise you is that when you go and file a patent application for yourself at the CIPC, man, put as much information, all those documents. Don't just put a one-pager, because there's no way that you're going to explain your invention in one page. So those drawings, every information about your invention included, so that when it's time for me to file a complete, at least I can try to salvage your invention based on all the documents that you submitted at the CIPC. So that's one guide, that I can give to you. But as long as you understand the risk that you actually might have not filed anything if you do it yourself. And for me, this is one I guess it's a separate thing, and it's probably a policy and it's something that maybe one can take up with our CIPC to sort of, and I think actually maybe the CIPC does provide some sort of a guidance to entrepreneurs on how to put, a better,
this is like going down the rabbit hole. Sorry to interrupt you, because even if they give the proper guidelines on what to do, at the end of the day, an inventor has a bigger chance of shooting themselves in the foot when they file their own provisional, because they don't have the experience to know that this is broad enough or it's so narrow, they've limited themselves. So, Bohopa, it is feasible for you to file for yourself, but I would advise to always seek help from an attorney so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot and you find that in future you are unable to protect your idea because you filed a very limiting provisional patent. Okay, so provisional patent, yes. I just want to move now to Yongama's question. Yongama wants to know, this is now more on the business side of intellectual property. He says, how can SMEs and startups effectively value their IP to include in their balance sheet on the asset side and leverage the value to access loans? So I can start with that. I know that initially companies used to add IP in part of their goodwill. So it was lumped in with all of the other things that they couldn't clearly, set as an asset, PPE, vehicles, buildings and so forth. So they used to lump it into goodwill. But there's a practice now where you can actually get your IP valuated to see how much it is, and then include that as part of the asset and not just part of like a whole jumble of things known as goodwill. Can you guys please add to this? William and Ayanda, maybe you can help, especially William. I mean, you must deal with this from the funding side.
Goodwill is not as easy as that. There's a whole lot of actuaries and people that deal with value of intellectual property, especially patents, but also trademarks. So there's a whole group. I'm not an accountant. I'm just a mere scientist. But there's a whole procedure that people go through, and it includes actuaries and there are formulas that they use. I mean, some of the things that they look at, for instance, they look at the price of competing products. Okay, so you have based on their value, we can then deduce value of yours based on whether it is an advance, how much it is a step forward relative to what is known. Others also will use a formula that looks at the cost of research and development. So they say, look, we have spent this much, and to get the real value out of this, we must multiply this by 100 and minus this and minus that plus this. So they've got formulas that they use. My advice is that you must get a proper IP evaluator to deal with the issue.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
I believe that we've answered all of the questions. If your question hasn't been answered or if we've missed it, guys, you can quickly type it in. But otherwise, we've reached the end of the session. And I just want to get like the final remarks from the panelists. Let's start with Florence, and then we'll move to Yvonne, Tumelo, William, Ayanda. Florence?
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tshaya Mashabela, UNISA, our wonderful moderator and co-panelists. It has been a wonderful session, and the conversation should continue from here. It's not going to end here. We'll continue to talk about it and try to generate more awareness, because it's very important. Yes, we are into the business of making money, but let's see how we can support the SMEs to grow their businesses, encourage them, not to scare them away. And for our participants, thank you for joining us. Thank you for lessons learned, and we believe that you've taken enough hints that will help you in mining your IP assets, commercializing your IP assets, protecting them, defending your assets, and most importantly, protecting you from any possible action for infringement. And for those of the SMEs like Neo that has been in the system and with the passion and everything, preach the gospel. As you come across other SMEs, let them understand what they are missing and what they start to benefit if they try to proactively protect their IPs. And thank you, everyone. And like I said, let the conversation continue. Thank you.
Yvonne?
Thank you, Florence. And I want to also thank Batusile Siluvi. He joined us in this webinar. He's very active as he was asking questions as well. He's an IP practitioner as well. And I want to also thank the panelists, and the topic was very, relevant for these days. But I also wanted to just add that I believe that as IP lawyers, Tumelo and Florence, that we could establish IP centers operating like NGOs, kind of, because honestly, otherwise Africa is just going to be at where it is, no patent. For 10 years, one country, no patent. It's just trademarks. And the issue is just simply that the series of commercialization, that value chain, and IP management is complex. It is not easily accessible. And this center, or whatever NGO it will be youth friendly and very, accessible. As a side that we do whilst operating the firms and all. I think we should lead in that, especially with SMEs and startups. But let's have more of these webinars, Tumelo, Florence. And I want to thank you all. Thank you for the business persons who came through here, Neo and Ntukutu. Yes, it was very interesting, and they are a success. We can shine through them. They're really a success. It's doable. And the SMEs have seen it. Thank you so much, and bye.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, Tumelo. Closing remarks.
Hey, Tumelo, Mara. You're muted.
Okay, guys, technology, it's okay. Thank you, everyone. I was saying thank you to my colleagues, Yvonne, Florence, Dr. Mudisa King, as well as UNISA for collaborating with us in this webinar. Thank you for our host, Kutlwano. And I think most importantly for me, the SME that came forth now, as well as in Tutuko, it's always good and well if me as a patent attorney, I try to convince you as an SME to show you or tell you the importance of IP. It might come on one side and get out on the other side, but if you hear it from people who have walked the path, people who have done it, I think it's very important. And thank you to Noel and to Tuko. And all I can say is that, entrepreneurs, small business, I think the message that we are trying to tell you is that knowing a little bit of IP is very important. We were talking to two CEOs, and they all are illustrating that at least knowing about IP, it is important, because that knowledge will cascade down to your employees, and you will be able to build the culture of IP management and IP protection within your company. And I'm not saying CEOs, business owners, you must be expert in IP. That's not what I'm saying, but you need to have a little bit of knowledge about intellectual property if you want to move your business forward, and create or get into the habit of signing non-disclosures agreements. These are the things where I was saying, it doesn't cost you much. Whenever you engage with anybody within your business, try to sign a non-disclosure agreement so that you can at least preserve the novelty of your invention. So thank you so much to everyone who came forth. And indeed, we are going to have more webinars. I think Africa, this is our time. We want to showcase IP within Africa, and I think this is going to be the first of many webinars that we'll be having within the continent.
Wonderful. Thanks, Melo. Dr. King.
Firstly, let me congratulate this panel and this UNISA and Tshaya Mashabela, but also to say we are truly getting transformed. I'm sitting with about how many ladies, black, young, interesting ladies who own firms. So I'm quite impressed. At least we are going somewhere. And I hope I'm talking to the right people who won't be big-headed tomorrow, but who are going to contribute to our society positively. So congratulations.
Thank you.
A special note to Ayanda. Ayanda, I don't think we're singing this man's praise enough. But his contribution to, he got into UNISA and he's been making
William?
Ma'am?
We lost you a bit there. So you were saying he got into UNISA and?
So, he got into UNISA, and since then you can see visible changes that are happening in terms of intellectual property there and how their participation in many platforms. And so it's quite interesting also how the university deals with intellectual property. It must be quite special to do that in a long distance learning institution, so it's quite interesting to see what he's doing there. So thank you very much to him. Tumelo is my former boss, and it's always interesting to work with her. And Kutlwano, thank you very much. I'm smiling. So thank you very much, colleague, and I really appreciate my association with all of you. I know that you are going to.
Thank you, William. Thanks, Ayanda. Please, you skated around my question about the incubator at UNISA. So in your closing remarks, can you please include information about that? I wasn't going to let you escape from that one.
Thank you very much, Tumelo. Thank you very much, Kutlwano, for that. Yeah, I was going to talk about that, just at the end. But thank you very much, firstly. Thank you very much, colleagues. This has been an eye-opener in so many ways. This has been a lively discussion in so many ways. And I must say that I actually like also the suggestion that was made by Yvonne, around having these continuous conversations, on IP. I think this is something that is quite important. Otherwise, we end up lamenting, about IP not being protected in the continent, for years to come. And it's up to us really to actually put, our shoulder to the wheel and do something about it. But I must say that there's three things that I want to mention, besides over and above, our tech transfer functions. Thank you very much, William, for that compliment. And I see also a person that we work with, we're hoping to work with going forward, which is McKevin. He's shown, his picture is there on screen, which is very much involved, is very much passionate about supporting startups, and it's something that we need more and more people that actually begin to create this movement, startup movement for the entire continent, things that are happening. So we within the tech transfer office, we started a pre-incubation program, and the idea is to support the innovators that we fund as part of our programs, for them to be able to want to develop their ideas and to really translate this into business. Right. So we're busy with that. We've got quite a number of them that are part of the pre-incubation program. We walk them through the entire process, and hopefully then they would then be ready to be picked up by other incubators, or even go to William, and of course we'll find people that are sort of further along. But also we are a TISC. We host a Technology Innovation Support Center, which is is a WIPO initiative, right? Where we actually provide assistance to entrepreneurs. They work, we find them somehow, they get referred to us, and we provide that kind of support, advice, and sometimes we may refer them to people. I know that there was one that came to us that was part of, we put him as well as part of our pre-incubation program, and we've referred him to Tumelo. So Tumelo is now Tumelo's client, in terms of protection, IP protection, which we do that. And I think this is the idea of having tests, and making sure that these tests are functional. Actually, I think it's very important for us. Though WIPO does not fund this, they form part of the WIPO's development agenda. They're not really fully funded, by WIPO. But I feel, as a person who sits in a tech transfer office at a university, I feel that it's my responsibility, it's my obligation, right, to actually support tech entrepreneurs out there. Even if my support that will be able to provide may be limited, but it's taking them in some direction, the way that we will do. But also we're running something very interesting for entrepreneurs. That there's an initiative that we're busy with together with Sage. But I would want Yongama, you here. I would want Yongama just to say a bit about this, in closing, just to say a bit about what we're doing with Sage and where we are, and because it's not just a South African initiative, right? The one that we're having with Sage, it's actually an African, sort of initiative. There's going to be, phase 1, phase 2, going into. There's been conversations about that, but it's really, creating content that actually supports, entrepreneurs. Yongama.
Thank you, Ayanda.
Thank you.
Ayanda, excuse me. Guys, I have to leave. I've got a board meeting that is starting in 20 minutes. So thank you very much and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, William.
Thanks, William. Okay, a quick one, Yongama.
Thank you, Kutlwana. Hello, everybody. As usual, Ayanda has thrown me in the deep end. Our association with Sage is called Elevate, and it is going to be in the form of a 6-part series of interviews with high-powered entrepreneurs and executives to give insights and information as well as skills development to entrepreneurs around certain subjects, from IP to business development, financial literacy, as well as accounting and things to that like. We're very excited about this because when we get it right, it will mean we can expand our support and allowing entrepreneurs to develop their businesses as best as they possibly can. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Yongama. One last thing from my side. I'm not marketing for anybody else, right? But I will give you a website as well that you look into, because this this dispels the notion that things are not happening in the continent, but we begin to see that things are happening. The continent is on the march, whether we follow, but the continent is on the march, in terms of creating, value, creating startups. There's a website that perhaps I would encourage everybody to look at. It's called Disrupting Africa. Just go and have a look and see what's happening in the entire continent. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, everyone. This was such an informative session, and I want to thank everyone for your participation, and I want to thank you as well for your patience, because we've just run over time, but you're still here. You are, participating, and the panelists are here and also being active and answering the questions. Thank you so much. And Yvonne, I agree, may we have many more of these webinars. I look forward to seeing you again on the next one. And we'll be sharing the video, everyone. I'm just sharing the names of the companies involved here as well for those who are interested. So check in the chat section for the names of the companies. And then if you need to contact them, please go ahead. And McKevin was asking for connections on LinkedIn. Feel free to do that. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.